Poughkeepsie, New York, quaint and peaceful.
She's living the perfect life with the perfect family, in the perfect house, in the perfect town.
But all that ends tonight.
They were watching her. She was being watched.
A triangle of illicit passion, with suspects and surprises at every twist and turn.
The number one suspect is always the other spouse.
In this town, a soul can be bought cheap. But when the bribe money runs out, someone still has to pay. Poughkeepsie, known as the Queen City of the Hudson, hugs the Hudson River and lies 75 miles north of New York City, in the seat of Dutchess County.
Pleasant Valley, New York it's right over the border of Connecticut in the corner of the state. Pleasant Valley I would describe much like the name, Pleasant. Although New York is not New England, it is a quaint New England type of sleepy town.
Rich in history, it's where the U.S. Constitution is ratified in 1788, and New York becomes the 11th colony to join together as the United States of America. Poughkeepsie is a vigorous hybrid of rural, urban, suburban, working class, and Ivy League.
It's very homey, it's very community-oriented, and the people are all friendly. I mean, you have robberies, you have drug-related crimes, but the one thing you don't see in Pleasant Valley is murder.
It's October 28th, 1999. Church choir practice at the Pleasant Valley United Methodist Church in Poughkeepsie finishes up for the night, and the friends say their goodnights.
It's a white church. The parking lot is across the street. And Susan comes out of choir practice. She's talking with a friend. And she walks across the street, waves goodbye to her friend. Other people are getting into the cars. She gets into her car and she sits down.
They were watching her. She was being watched.
As she puts her seatbelt buckle on, all of a sudden, 6 shots are fired into her. And these are basically at point blank range.
Started firing, just kept firing a gun at the car.
As people from choir practice are beginning to see what's going on, they run to the car, they go in, they dial 911, state police arrive, local police arrive, EMTs arrive, and Susan Fassett is still alive.
Susan Fassett is a farmer's daughter. A tall, attractive blonde, age 48. She's a slim and fit mother of 2 who lives with her husband and children in the town of Pleasant Valley. This part of Dutchess County is rapidly developing from working farms to sprawling malls. Susan is passionate about raising her family.
She took the kids everywhere. Yankee games, Catskills, on vacations, skiing. They went and did everything together.
Employed by the city of Poughkeepsie.
She worked in human resources for the town, so she hired people.
Energetic and engaged with life from early morning till late at night, Susan can be spotted around town driving a flashy brand new SUV. She participates in fitness classes at the community center, nurtures her family, and supports her place of worship.
She goes to church 3 times a week, Sundays, and then she practices with the choir.
There appears to be nothing special about that Thursday night when, just like everyone else in her choir, Susan Fassett has dinner with her family, and then she leaves for singing rehearsal at the Pleasant Valley United Methodist Church.
On the outside, if you look at Susan Fassett's life, she's living the perfect life with the perfect family, in the perfect house, in the perfect town.
She participates in a normal night of choir practice, an activity she loves.
Susan is at choir practice, and she's singing her heart out, and choir practice ends.
But no one can know. This night is far from normal. Susan Fassett is identified to police by her friends at the scene.
Susan Fassett, she's the wife of the lieutenant in the police department. She's a mother of 2. She works for the town of Poughkeepsie.
There was a pulse. The EMS was there. They treated her. They tried to stabilize her.
And they rush her to the hospital.
Witnesses report that the car parked next to Susan's vehicle takes off at top speed after the shots.
They didn't know what kind of car it was.
A couple of the choir members even give a partial license plate number and describe it as a metallic-covered station wagon. That's pretty distinct. So the state police have things to go on.
Officers search the scene for clues. Susan's friends and choir mates are stunned by the savage attack in the church parking lot.
If that happens, anything is possible.
There were shell casings at the scene. Shell casings at the scene were recovered, collected, and brought to the ballistics laboratory where they were sent for analysis.
As Susan is trying to be saved in the emergency room at the hospital, investigators are rushing to see if they can find this perpetrator. And they run that partial plate and the description of the vehicle.
Very swiftly, the search on the partial plate produces unexpected and ominous results.
And what they come up with is Jeff Fassett, a lieutenant in the police force.
The match is for Susan's husband, Jeff Fassett's car.
The number one suspect is always the other spouse. 85% of the cases, that's the case. He's a cop, he's a lieutenant, so he can be armed. And they decide to call out their SWAT team. They get the SWAT team and they surround the Fassett home. They're in the woods, hiding in the dark. So Jeff Fassett is at home with his son and his son's girlfriend. In fact, Jason Fassett, the son, and his girlfriend are leaving. And they go back inside the house and they say, "Dad, what's going on? There are cops everywhere, across the street, in the bushes. What's going on?"
Jeff was a police officer, so all these cops that went to his house knew him, and they felt bad.
Jeff Fassett, police lieutenant, and his son and son's girlfriend are surrounded by Jeff Fassett's own police force.
They were having problems, Sue and her husband.
So Jeff Fassett explains, "Yeah, I knew she was having an affair." Inside the ER, Susan is fighting for her life, and she loses that fight.
In a town of the very rich and the very poor, the Fassett family appeared to be regular, upstanding people. But on the night of October 28th, 1999, Susan Fassett is gunned down. Her police lieutenant husband, Jeff Fassett's car, is a match for the speeding getaway car, and their home is surrounded by police.
They're in the woods, hiding in the dark.
Jeff Fassett, police lieutenant, phones his own workplace to find out what's happening to his family.
First thing going through the guy's mind is, what did I do? And if he didn't do nothing, then of course you've got nothing to worry about. Maybe it's a mistaken identity, or that would definitely be going through my mind. Well, what did I do?
But soon, the SWAT team moves in to take down the Fassets.
Jeff Fassett says, "I have no idea what's going on." But no sooner do they do that, does the SWAT team roll in, take Jason and his girlfriend, tackle them to the ground, handcuff them, and then rush into the house and grab Jeff Fassett.
They brought them down to the police station. I heard that it was a very difficult interview.
This crime was in its infancy. It just happened.
Jeff tells them, "I was home all night long."
They go very fast. Get as much information as you can
One of the things that state police do to Jeff Fassett is they give him a polygraph.
Police do not explain to the Fassets why they're being questioned.
Now here is the horrible part of this. The mother of Jason and the wife of Jeff is fighting for her life as they are being questioned about her potential murder. And they don't even know what happened to her.
And they broke the news to him that his vehicle was involved in a shooting.
Inside the ER, Susan is fighting for her life, and she loses that fight. Susan Fassett dies from those 6 gunshot wounds.
Police now have a murder on their hands. Susan Fassett's body will go to autopsy as the interrogation of the Fassets continues. Police grill the Fassets for about 10 hours.
It's only at the end of that interview that they say, the reason why we're doing this is because, your wife, your mother, she's been murdered, she's dead. That's how they find out about Susan Fassett being gunned down during an interrogation.
They asked Jeff if he was involved, and he said absolutely not.
However, its shiny surface of the perfect marriage, all is not well between Jeff and Susan Fassett.
They were having problems, Sue and her husband.
In September 1999, Jeff gets proof of an affair through his wife's phone calls. He confronts her, and she admits the truth. Jeff immediately moves into an apartment attached to their house. The marriage seems like it's over. But in time, they decide to seek help and save their relationship.
Sometimes 20 years go by and people grow apart. And Susan and her husband, they were getting along great, but they just weren't emotionally connected anymore.
Jeff forgives Susan, and they decide to reconcile and renew their vows. In a symbolic gesture, they throw away their old wedding bands and buy new ones.
She wants to reconcile with her husband. She loves her husband. She loves her family. She loves her life. But she's just having maybe a breakdown of some sort.
Jeff Fassett picks up his new wedding band 5 weeks later, on the day Susan is gunned down.
So Jeff Fassett explains, yeah, I knew she was having an affair, but I didn't kill her.
The polygraph results are favorable to Jeff Fassett.
He passes it. I mean, what else does the guy have to say? Not only that, but he's a lieutenant in the police department himself.
It's discovered that there is an early mistake in the case. The license plate reported seen leaving the crime that led them to Jeff Fassett is incorrectly processed.
The confusion about why they went after Jeff Fassett is that dispatch screwed up the license plate numbers and actually gave police Susan Fassett's license plate number. So it looked like Jeff had left that scene and it was all a mistake.
There are more revelations. The autopsy reveals that Susan has had sex within 48 hours. Authorities want to know if that partner was Jeff.
When Jeff Fassett offers up his DNA, he becomes very distraught because he realizes, wow, I didn't sleep with my wife, so that means somebody else did.
Faced with this devastating information, Jeff Fassett tells investigators who they should pick up. He believes he knows the man who is capable of killing Susan.
I know I didn't kill her. Go talk to this guy.
Jeff Fassett gives the police a name.
Everything is happening so fast. You got a victim, they got the plate number, and they inadvertently ran the wrong plate number. But that mistake turned out to give a suspect. So inadvertently, it wasn't a total wash with the wrong plate because the husband gave up Fred Andros, who that would be a prime suspect.
Susan Fassett is gunned down and killed outside of her church choir practice. Her husband, Jeff, tells police their marriage has been rocky due to Susan's affair. Jeff Fassett believes that he and his wife are reconciled, but the autopsy reveals that Susan recently had sex, and it wasn't with him. Jeff Fassett tells police the identity of Susan's affair, the man who he believes is capable of killing Susan. Their affair has been going on for years, and Susan's former lover is a surprise. The individual, a well-known and well-hated person in Poughkeepsie, Fred Andros.
When you mentioned Fred Andros' name, people would immediately go, oh, that guy? Number one, Fred Andros is corrupt as they come.
He is also charismatic, unattractive, and highly promiscuous.
My father wasn't even that good looking, to be honest with you, but things that he said to women, you're beautiful, you look so nice today. Even in restaurants, to waitresses, he'd call them honey, make them feel really good. Thanks for your good job. He'd go over and give them a big tip and then leave a small tip on the table. So he was very much a charmer. And women liked him a lot because he was like that.
You have people that walk in the room, they turn heads, people are looking at saying, oh, look at this guy. Then you got Fred Andros comes in and people are looking and turning around and Fred Andros thinks he's this guy.
Married 4 times, Andros juggles affairs with several women at the same time and indulges in a predilection for prostitutes.
He was with so many women, I can't even count them. And all these affairs were even when he was married, to every wife.
Jeff Fassett believes that his wife's former affair, Fred Andros, is the person police should talk to.
Why don't you go see that Fred Andros? Because that's who she's screwing around with. Now go see him. I know I didn't kill her. Go talk to this guy.
Police act fast on Jeff Fassett's tip.
So they go to his house, 2 o'clock in the morning that night, and bang on his door. And Fred is just, what the hell do you want? No, I'm not answering any of your questions. Fred is very, very abrasive when it comes to law enforcement.
Fred Andros is used to calling the shots.
Fred asks them, why are you even here? Why are you waking me up in the middle of the night? And he's abrasive and he's angry. And then they tell him Susan Fassett has been murdered. And we know you had an affair with her. And Fred actually gets very upset about this, hearing of her death.
Not only is the affair over, Fred also claims that he can prove where he was at the time of the murder.
And then Fred gives them an alibi, because they ask him, where were you? He gives them an alibi.
There's no way he would have done that.
Fred Andros spends 3 decades as water boss for the town of Poughkeepsie, beginning in 1966.
Fred Andros had a reputation in Poughkeepsie, in Pleasant Valley, as this guy that in one way you didn't want to mess with because he controlled the water permits in the town. So if you had anything to do with water, you didn't want to mess with Fred. On the other hand, you mention Fred's name and people be like, that guy, he thinks he's a big shot, but he's a nobody.
He works in a corrupt culture of kickbacks. Fred takes bribes, but they are sanctioned by officials higher up than Fred.
You went to Fred if you were putting in a small strip mall. And you needed the water inspected, the lines, everything before you could move on. Fred was the type of guy where he'd allow you to lay all the pipes in, say, a 5-acre parking lot. And he'd allow you to start paving it. And then he'd come to you and he'd say, I want $5,000 for myself, or I don't give you the permits for this. Fred's entire life in Poughkeepsie was shaking down people for cash.
He's a small man with a big, nasty reputation.
And what's interesting about Fred Andros is He's kind of disgusting. He's ugly, yet he seemed to get the ladies. And I could never figure out while I was working on this case how that came about because he was so reviled by many people.
Everybody loved him or everybody hated him. So they loved him when they wanted something, and then they started to hate him because of what he became.
The corruption in Poughkeepsie runs high and deep. But now, all of that is crumbling from above, and Fred scrambles to save himself from being crushed. Fred's colleague, the town's property assessor, Basil Rauchi, 55, disappears on October 4th, 1997, after federal agents urge him to testify against county's Republican political boss, Bill Paroli Sr. Paroli is accused of controlling the Poughkeepsie government's shakedown enterprise. Rauchi is soon found, his lifeless body fished out of the Hudson River. Hours after Paroli's arrest, Fred Andros resigns from his 33-year water position and pleads guilty to a federal charge of conspiracy for serving as Paroli's minion.
The FBI comes in, and what the FBI likes to do is look for the weakest link. And the weakest link in this case is Fred Andros, because they know he's a coward. They know if they go to him and they squeeze him, he's gonna say, I'll tell you anything you want, as long as I don't go to jail. He's that guy.
Fred Andros secretly negotiates with the feds to get off easy in exchange for testifying against the big boss Paroli.
He retired, he said, due to medical reasons, but he retired because he was in trouble.
Newly retired, a major federal corruption case looming over him, Fred Andros answers questions about the brutal slaying of his former affair, Susan Fassett.
My father was up all night with police questioning him, investigators questioning him about the death of Susan Fassett.
Fred Andros and his wife hold a dinner party for friends at the time of Susan's murder, so he has an alibi. Police ask Fred if he had sex with Susan Fassett within the last 48 hours. He denies it, adding he's on a medication that renders him impotent. No gun is found in relation to the killing. Without a murder weapon, forensic examiners can only study the ballistic evidence removed from the body of Susan Fassett.
She was shot with a .45 caliber pistol. And one of the bullets actually goes through both carotid arteries. So, I mean, she really didn't have a chance. Fred Andros and Jeff Fassett are cleared really with alibis. Both of them were not at that church when Susan Fassett was murdered.
However, the officers have DNA that proves Susan had sex just before her death. They want DNA from both men, Jeff and Fred, to see if someone is lying to them.
When Jeff Fassett offers up his DNA, he becomes very distraught because he realizes, wow, I didn't sleep with my wife, so that means somebody else did. And he thought they were reconciling.
Jeff Fassett's response is very different from that of Fred Andros.
And he says, my lawyer says I shouldn't do it, so I gotta listen to him. I wanna help, but I gotta listen to him.
Despite his refusal, officers hatch a plan to retrieve Fred Andros' DNA. The officer stops by Fred's house and invites Fred into his car to talk about the case. He brings Andros fast food, which Fred notoriously loves.
Fred's eating his burger, his fries.
But he isn't touching the soda pop, so the officer acts.
Turned the temperature in the car up as high as it could go. So Fred had to take a sip.
The officer now has Fred's DNA, but will he be able to secure it?
And sure enough, Fred says, I'm out of here. Opens the door, walks away.
Fred leaves the cup behind.
He has a soda with a straw sticking out of it with Fred's DNA on the top of it. He runs that to the lab. There's the match. Fred's DNA inside of Susan Fassett. Fred had slept with Susan Fassett within hours of the murder.
Fred Andros has lied to police about his relationship with Susan Fassett.
So Fred is dragged in and the feds are there.
And they're turning the screws for him. I mean, they must be telling him, listen, This is gonna happen. This is gonna happen. Now he starts to buckle.
Fred Andros breaks down and tells police that it's not him they should be looking at. And the case takes another unexpected turn. Fred tells police they need to investigate someone else, Susan's secret lesbian lover.
Her car is a metallic station wagon.
They asked her about a gun, and she says, yeah, I do have a gun.
They know now they have the shooter.
When family woman Susan Fassett is gunned down outside of her church, police interrogate her lover, a corrupt, reviled former city employee, Fred Andros. Police outwit Andros, who inadvertently gives up a DNA sample, which proves he recently had sex with Susan. But Andros astonishes police when he points them to who he thinks the real killer is, Susan Fassett's secret lesbian lover.
My father eventually said, I think I know who did it. And they said, who? And he said, her first name is Dawn.
Fred Andros tells police that he engages in threesomes with Susan and her lover, and they need to look to Dawn Silvernail in Susan's death, who had the motive of jealousy. Fred has a 20-year friendship with Dawn Silvernail. They initially meet on Citizens Band Radio, a shared hobby.
My father, his CB handle was Neptune.
A fitting name given his role in the city's water department.
He surely was acting like it. Like as a strong-arming people pay up where you get no water.
So on the CB radio, you had a handle. For Dawn, it was Delta Dawn. That's what she called herself over the airwaves. And what you did is you knew people without knowing them. So you spoke to them on the radio, Neptune speaking to Delta Dawn, but you don't really know who each other are as people.
But Delta Dawn and Neptune are soon to meet.
Dawn Silvernail, tall gal, very tall among her peers, among her friends, among her community. One of the quirky things about Dawn is she moonlighted as a country singer.
When we met her, she was a very, very beautiful woman. She had long blonde hair.
Dawn and Fred initially met when Fred took his wife out one night to see Dawn sing at a country bar. And here's that meeting. I'm Delta Dawn, you're Neptune? Wow. This is your wife? Wow.
And my father just got caught up with her and started having an affair.
But it doesn't last long sexually. The friendship lasts a lot longer.
Dawn meets Ed Silvernail, falls in love, and gets married.
Dawn put an end to it. She said, Fred, I'm not sleeping with you no more. I love Ed. I have a home with Ed. He's a good man, and I'm not doing that to him.
She didn't seem like she would be the kind of person that would have an affair.
Police are suspicious of Fred's story.
I mean, this doesn't make sense. Susan was not a lesbian. Dawn, they can find no evidence of her being a lesbian, so there was no lesbian affair. What motive would Dawn have to kill Susan Fassett when they don't even know each other?
Despite their doubts, authorities do their due diligence and look up Dawn Silvernail in the system.
She's got a 45 that she registered, and her car is a metallic colored station wagon. So this looks like that Dawn Silvernail was parked next to Susan Fassett that night, fired those shots, killed her, and drove away.
Police pay Dawn Silvernail a visit.
They asked her about a gun, and she says, yeah, I do have a gun. And she gives it right up. She gives the gun right up to him. That's kind of strange. Without any warrant, without any, contesting, she gives the gun right up.
They take Dawn's gun in for forensic testing. When they do the ballistics and they realize the gun has been cored out, that means The barrel of the gun has just been drilled out where you can't match the striations on the bullet to the striations now on the barrel of the gun, which is almost like a fingerprint.
Pouring out a gun would be basically altering the ballistics. The marks that are in that gun, you're changing them now, or you're removing them.
Somebody tampered with that gun for a reason.
So what comes to mind is that she figures, well, the gun's been altered. I'll give you the gun right up. You know, it's not going to tell you anything.
Unlikely or not, authorities now believe that Don Silvernail is the shooter. But with a tampered murder weapon, they are unable to prove their suspicions until one of the officers makes a connection.
This is when one of the detectives says, hey, I noticed a tree in the back. They were taking target practice back there with that gun. So maybe they were taking target practice before the barrel was cored out.
Authorities go to Don's backyard.
Then there were still bullets in the tree.
They are able to pry a bullet out of the tree and test it against the bullets taken from Susan Fassett's body.
And they find out that's the gun that shot both bullets. The one from the tree and the one in Susan Fassett's body. They know now they have their shooter, and that shooter's Don Silvernail. As the investigation leads to Don Silvernail, things start falling into place.
And Don Silvernail starts to crack.
They were there a couple of hours, and she broke down and said, I didn't do this on my own.
She begins to tell this story now of an elaborate plan by none other than her old friend, Fred Andros.
And I did it by his instruction.
Dawn tells police she only commits the murder because Fred holds something awful over her.
One of the things that Dawn talks about is he showed me pictures taken like stealthily from afar of my son at work, at home.
If you don't do this for me, I'm going to release these pictures, and now something may happen to your son.
Dawn owes Fred Andros money, and Fred uses that power over Dawn.
Dawn has been coming to Fred now for a while, asking him for money, to borrow money again. And he's lending her money. But Fred gets an idea. He says, Dawn, this is what I want you to do. I want you to sleep with my girlfriend, and I want to watch. So Fred wants Dawn to sleep with the woman he's having an affair with, Susan Fassett. He wants them two to get together so he can watch it and he can videotape it. That was his game. I'm gonna get stuff on you, and I'm gonna get you to do something for me. Whether it's give me money, whether it's fix something for me, or whether it's murder. I'm gonna get you to do something for me, and you're gonna do it. That was Fred Andros.
When Dawn tells the truth, Fred Andros is exposed. Police go to pick up Fred Andros for his role in the killing of Susan Fassett.
So when they came in the house, the one investigator came in the house. He walked around the house to look for him. They were calling Fred, Fred, where are you? We know that you're here.
And then they hear a shot. What happened? So they go up and they find Fred. As cowards like Fred do, he tried to kill himself when the state police were coming for him.
It's a 50-50 shot. Anything is possible when it comes to a gun.
Fred misses making a fatal shot.
He shot off half of his face is what it did.
You got this Fred Andros, who he just basically couldn't do nothing right.
Police call for an ambulance. They want to save Fred Andros' life, so he will face the consequences of his actions. Fred Andros tries to point police to his old friend, Don Silvernail, for the murder of Susan Fassett. But the plan backfires. Although Don confesses, she tells police that Fred blackmails her into carrying out his dirty work. Police rush to pick up Fred, and he shoots himself in the head, but the bullet misses the fatal path.
It was a horrible sight. It was horrible. I felt terrible and sad that he had that much desperation where he thought he had to do that.
So for the next year, Fred is in jail, but he gets like a year's worth of reconstructive surgery on his face to make himself look presentable.
They reconstructed his palate, they reconstructed his nose. He had a different nose, but otherwise he was the same.
In February 2001, Fred Andros stands trial for the murder of Susan Fassett, and Dawn Silvernail is the star witness. She tells a jury of 8 men and 4 women a lurid story of Fred's power over her.
So for Dawn, Fred was kind of this go-to loan shark.
Over the course of their friendship, Fred Andros lends Dawn thousands of dollars. As payment, Fred makes a gift of Dawn Silvernail to men whom he wants to please.
Dawn and my father did have a lengthy relationship that we didn't know about until all this murder thing came out.
He uses the town facilities for his illicit affairs.
I know it happened in one of the pump stations. They had mattresses there, and that's where it happened.
Dawn wasn't involved knowingly in any of this, but what happened was Fred would say to Dawn, take this envelope and deliver it for me and I'll pay you X amount of money. You know, and Dawn is thinking, well, she's delivering documents or whatever, but these are kind of payoffs.
Dawn was the in-between. He would give her money to drop off.
So Dawn is committing crimes, federal crimes, without really knowing it. And this is just one more thing that Fred Andros can hold over Dawn's head.
Dawn is convinced she must kill for Fred, but she is terrified.
Dawn tells this story to the jury about actually stalking Susan. She went to Susan Fassett's house one night, about a week before the murder, dressed in black, with a gun, and she was going to kill her that night. But she didn't have the nerve.
Dawn said that she tried a couple of times. She went almost to her house. She said she couldn't do it.
But Fred Andros is relentless. He pushes Dawn to the edge, and she finally goes over. Dawn parks beside Susan Fassett's car across from the church.
She put her seat down and waited for Susan to come out. And when Susan came out, she just sat up and she just shot her through the window, didn't even get out of the vehicle.
My father had given Dawn a different plate to put on her car just in case that they spotted the license plate.
Dawn dumps the gun on a county road and pages Fred Andros with a signal that the murder is done. Fred picks up the gun, alters the ballistic imprint by coring the barrel, and then Dawn retrieves it.
He told her that it was all drilled out, not to worry about it.
She gives the entire narrative of everything. And then she says, in tears, I shot that poor woman, I shot that poor woman, I shot that poor woman. But she also points and says, for him, I did it for Fred Andros. He's the one who asked me to do it.
Dawn Silvernail's story is solidly backed up by evidence. On February 23, 2001, Fred Andros is convicted of murder in the 2nd degree and conspiracy in the 1st degree in the County Court of Dutchess County. He is sentenced to 25 years to life on the murder charge and 8 to 25 years on the conspiracy charge.
If they charged him with murder for hire, that's a capital felony in any state. He could have saw the death penalty.
Before she receives her sentence, Dawn Silvernail tearfully apologizes to her own family and to the Fassett family.
And I will say, in 45 books I've written about murderers, Dawn is the only one who had remorse, admitted to everything to me, and was actually sorry about it.
Every day of my father's trial, I would always give him the thumbs up so that he would have it would give him a little lift. And the last day when they convicted him, I didn't give him the thumbs up.
Fred Wanted to be like this gangster type.
He rose from a ditch digger to the superintendent. So he wasn't going to get stepped on anymore. He was going to do what he had to do to be powerful and let people know that he was powerful.
Fred's prison term is to run consecutively with the federal prison sentence of 33 months for his part in the corruption scandal.
I felt sorry for my father because my father was such a smart man. He could do anything, and for him to be so smart to be stupid. He thought he was smarter than the cops. He told me once that he was the smartest motherfucker that he knew.
The heinous, sordid case ends. Corruption ringleader Bill Paroli Sr. pleads guilty to one federal count of corruption conspiracy and gets a slap on the wrist, fined just $24,000, and locked up for 18 months. But the question remains, why did Fred have Susan killed?
My father had told Dawn that Susan was going to get him into a lot of trouble because she knew more about the federal case and he didn't want her to spill her guts.
But there's another take on the murder of Susan Fassett, who made the choice to reconcile with her husband just before her killing.
Fred Andros killed Susan Fassett for the oldest motive in the book. Revenge. If I can't have you, nobody can. You don't tell me no. You reject me, you die. That's Fred Andros.
Susan Fassett pays the ultimate price for her vulnerability.
I think Dawn and my father both got what they deserved.
They're bad people. They're bad people.
Susan Fassett was just a happy-go-lucky person, kind of hit a roadblock in her life. She had an affair, but are we to judge somebody by having an affair? That wasn't who she was. It was something she did. She met up with the devil in disguise.
A young couple meet and marry, but an affair rips their family apart and makes bad blood between former friends. The new couple has a lot of problems and a collection of guns at their disposal. Simmering hatred erupts into violence. Authorities are twisted and turned in a labyrinth of deception as they dig deeper and deeper to discover who pulls the trigger on Helium Road. Amarillo is the Spanish word for yellow, and the name of the 14th most populous city in the state of Texas. Settled in 1887, the name probably sprang from the color of Amarillo's subsoil. Houses were once painted yellow to honor the name. Today, Amarillo is the home of the only nuclear weapons assembly and disassembly facility in the country, which gave rise to its nickname, Bomb City. The state of Texas is considered to have some of the most relaxed gun laws in the United States.
Three WT students were sharing a house out in rural Randall County, west of Amarillo. They were on their way to their house when they drove down Helium Road and saw this vehicle on the side of the road and what looked like maybe a body, and they were afraid to approach the vehicle, but they called 911 and the sheriff's department was dispatched. Fairly quickly, they had identified the victim as Robin Spielbauer.
Robin is a young woman with a domestic bent, inspired by her parents' happy marriage and thriving careers in the United States military. She wants the same kind of life and to be a mother, but Robin is conflicted. While she aspires to a clean-cut, nice man like her dad, she is also attracted to bad boys.
Robin was a military brat who moved with her family from North Dakota to Amarillo, Texas in 1995. Robin began working at a local cafe in Amarillo, and she soon met Jeremy David Spielbauer in 2003.
Known as JD, he tells her about his service in the Marine Corps, with combat time in Iraq and Afghanistan. The pair becomes inseparable.
Robin and JD's relationship progressed very quickly. Robin's parents, the Bledsoes, were surprised at how quickly the relationship progressed. However, they trusted that their daughter was making good decisions, and ultimately they just wanted Robin to be happy, and it seemed as if she was happy with JD.
They met in 2003 and married in 2005. After she and JD married, they had 2 children.
But parenting comes with new stresses, and cracks begin to show in their relationship. The couple decides to attend church, hoping it will strengthen the foundation of their marriage. It's at the church that the Spielbauers meet a young criminal justice student.
JD and Robin, from time to time, attended church at a place called Cowboy Church. It's up south of Amarillo, and Katie Phipps was also attending church there. And for a while, Katie and Robin actually struck up a friendship.
Robin was friends with Katie and trusted Katie in her relationship with JD. However, JD was telling Katie that his relationship or marriage with Robin was on the rocks and that they were headed for divorce. Robin and JD started going multiple times a week. Some of their friends questioned what their newfound interest in the church was, and some of them believed that it wasn't the religion that was drawing them to the church.
Katie babysits for them occasionally, and sometimes Katie's daughter sleeps over at their place.
Katie became very close with Robin and JD, and they welcomed her into the family. Robin didn't notice that the relationship between JD and Katie was growing until it was too late.
The 2 lovers proclaim their feelings. Robin files for divorce, and once it's finalized in 2013, JD marries Katie.
JD and Katie had a lot of things in common, including their love of firearms. Between them, they had quite a collection of guns. There was stress in their marriage because Robin was still involved in their relationship due to the fact that JD and Robin had children together. Katie didn't like that and was jealous of the fact that Robin was still involved in their lives.
Robin moves back into her parents' home with her children in 2013, and she struggles to make ends meet. JD and Robin fight incessantly over visitation rights and child support. There's an incident where JD needs to borrow part of a $400 a month child support payment to Robin to pay for his household with Katie.
Robin is mad and depressed about JD and Katie's new marriage. To make matters worse, the newlyweds moved in down the street from Robin's parents, so she frequently had to see them while she was at her parents' house.
There was a lot of animosity between Katie and Robin, and everyone knew it. It was no secret. Everyone knew it.
With tensions high between Robin, Katie, and JD, it seems like just a matter of time before they boil over. After a series of texts, Robin tucks her 2 children into bed and tells her mother she'll be back later. Katie picks up her son Diego and takes him to spend the evening with her best friend. JD is in the company of someone as well.
He calls his Uncle Ty, and Ty comes over to the house, and they drink a couple of beers and talk.
Robin leaves her family and goes out into the night to an undisclosed location. Little does she know, this will be the last drive she ever takes. Amarillo is the 14th most populous city in the state of Texas. It is in Amarillo that J.D. and Robin Spielbauer marry and have children. But J.D.'s affair with a mutual friend turns into a messy divorce and remarriage. The three former friends struggle to be civil. On Helium Road, April 8th, 2014, a driver notices something bizarre. What appears to be a bloodied body is spotted beside an SUV. Emergency vehicles are summoned to the scene. The morning after Robin goes out, Robin's mother wakes up to see Robin never returned home to sleep. Initially, she isn't concerned, as Robin occasionally spends the night with friends. But by later in the morning, Robin's parents call and text some of Robin's friends and hunt for her presence on social media. Robin's dad calls police and hospitals in the area. The Amarillo Police Department shows up to the house around 11 a.m. to file a missing persons report.
Under Texas law, there's no waiting period to report a missing person if the reporting person thinks that the missing person's life may be in danger.
Later that afternoon, a friend of Robin's alerts the family of a news article that shows a black SUV surrounded by first responder vehicles. It looks just like Robin's vehicle, and a parent's worst nightmare is about to be confirmed. A female victim is found beside the vehicle, west of Amarillo, near the intersection of Helium Road and West County Road 34. She's been the victim of foul play. District Attorney James Farron is contacted.
It was standard practice for the Sheriff's Department to contact me if a homicide had occurred, and once Robin's body was discovered at 34th and Helium, they contacted me, and I was present and offering advice and suggestions throughout their investigation.
Authorities note strange pink color smears on Robin's car window.
They saw damage to the vehicle, contact marks. They saw scratches, they saw paint, transfer of paint.
Something hard, probably metallic, had been used to strike that window several times and cause chip marks, and there was a pink smear on the window.
Hard objects come in contact, especially in a scraping motion or hitting motion, you're going to have a transfer of paint if there is paint on that particular object.
No wallet or phone is found on the victim, who shows the signs of having engaged in a struggle.
It was obvious that she had suffered several serious blows to her head and neck and face area.
When you see that, you look, well, this person looked like they were beat up. She looks like she was beat up.
She had injuries that were consistent with several blows to her head and face. They believe she had died as a result of blunt force trauma.
This appears to be a clear-cut case of a robbery gone wrong.
Robin's wallet was missing and her cell phone was missing when the investigation began. Whoever killed Robin took her wallet and her phone. We didn't know whether, was this a robbery? Was this just a random event out on Helium Road? By mid-afternoon, the Sheriff's Department had contacted her parents, and her parents had confirmed that they believed that was Robin.
Police gather information from people who know Robin.
When a spouse or ex-spouse dies, one of the first people investigators look at is the spouse or ex-spouse, but other than just a general rule, they didn't have anything at that point to point to J.D. or Katie or anybody else. Katie indicated she didn't know anything other than what she'd heard from other people who'd called her. And J.D. told the same story, that He just didn't have any information that would be of help to them. He really didn't know anything about it.
In the days to follow, the Spielbauers make formal statements. JD tells investigators that after visiting with his uncle, he falls asleep on the couch.
Maybe 9:40-ish, 9:50 at that. Because I started sending text messages and calling. Because I sent one to my wife. She said, we're good, everything's okay. I was like, okay.
About 10:15, he calls Uncle Ty and wants him to come back over to the house. JD tells Uncle Ty in the garage that night, you know, I've got a bad feeling about Robin.
I just have an uneasy feeling. This seemed to be by school.
JD then proceeds to send Robin a text at 10:18, asking if everyone is okay.
I didn't get a text or anything from her. I was like, okay. Tried calling her, got a voicemail. Like, all right. Maybe she's busy, sleeping, I don't know.
Police are satisfied at first.
Robin's cell phone was missing from the scene. However, the detectives were able to recover information from her service provider.
And in those text messages, it was obvious there was communication between JD and Robin, and that Robin believed they were going to meet that evening of the 7th. And so, for obvious reasons, they bring JD back into the sheriff's office and interview him and confront him with this text message information.
Police confront JD with the text messages from the missing cell phone that no one ever expected to see. Newlyweds Katie and JD have ever-escalating tension with JD's ex-wife. Robin is found murdered in an apparent robbery gone wrong. Data recovered from Robin's cell service provider shows that she had a meeting planned with JD the night of her murder, contrary to what he tells police.
Did you have any plans to meet Robin Monday evening?
No plans.
How do you explain these text messages? Let me read these to you in case your memory's failing you.
Police ask JD to explain the recovered text messages.
He concedes that he wasn't completely honest with them during the first conversation. That it's true, he was supposed to meet Robin that night, but the meeting was supposed to take place at his house, which is just 2 houses down from where Robin was living with her parents. He said that they were going to meet and talk about the upcoming school year and the children and visitation and the general agenda for the children, and that she stood him up. She never showed up.
You're the last person on this earth to have contact with her, and that contact was arranging a meeting that she made.
Yes, sir. And that makes me number one suspect no matter what.
It leaves me wondering what happened.
Nothing. Leaves me wondering too, sir.
JD claims he has good reason to keep meetings with his ex-wife secret. Robin and his wife, Katie, notoriously hate each other since the divorce and marriage.
His further explanation was that bad blood had developed between Katie and Robin for obvious reasons. And so this meeting, according to JD, was going to be at his house because Katie was going to be gone for the evening visiting a friend, and so it would be okay for Robin to come over. There wouldn't be a confrontation between Katie and Robin because Katie wasn't going to be home that evening.
The reason for the animosity is interesting to police.
It's understandable that Robin would feel hostility toward Katie. Katie's hostility toward Robin was actually caused by the same suspicion that Robin had. Katie had concluded that JD was now having an affair with Robin. He was married to Robin, had an affair with Katie. Now he's married to Katie, and Katie believes he's having an affair with Robin. And she is just hammering JD every day, not only in person, but Later, when we acquired her phone records, her text messages for 2 or 3 weeks prior to the murder were just endless attacks, diatribes against J.D. I know you're having an affair with Robin. I know you're cheating.
In fact, in the 4 days leading up to the murder, Katie sends J.D. no less than 336 angry text messages. Katie sends an ominous message. "I'll take care of this myself." And J.D. appears to hint that he knows something about the murder.
Let me run a scenario by you. Katie's not stupid. She's pretty sharp. She finds out y'all are having a meeting that night. That's why she's pissed. That's why she's not at the house. You set the meeting up. Something really bad happened.
So you're basically either saying I did something personally or physically to my wife, or I know of something.
You know something. My very soul, I believe you know what's going on here. The best I can do, giving you the benefit of every doubt I can possibly give you, is that you have some real deep frickin' suspicions that you don't want to discuss with me.
Sir, I do have a lot of suspicions.
He did know something about the night of the 7th and something about Robin and that they were supposed to meet. But his position was, whether he lied or whether he forgot, that the meeting never occurred, that she didn't show up.
But she did show up dead on Helium Road. Investigators believe that Robin dies as a result of blunt force trauma.
During the autopsy, they find a projectile inside her skull. They x-ray the body, of course. Ballistics comes up beautiful on an x-ray, and they see a projectile. They open the skull up, they retrieve the projectile. It's a small caliber at the time.
The bullet removed from Robin's skull is examined.
We would get the projectile, we would weigh it. I could hold it in my hand and tell you that it's a .22 caliber. I would then reaffirm from experience, I would throw it on the scale, check the weight. It could be a .22 caliber pistol, or it could be a .22 caliber rifle. You know, there's two types of firearms, several types of firearms that fire that particular caliber.
The slug recovered from Robin's brain is too deformed to perform thorough ballistic testing upon it.
Detectives went back to the scene where the body and vehicle were located and searched for a casing.
Took a large area around where the vehicle and body were, and they marked it off in grids with strings and stakes. They sifted through every square inch of that soil, and they recovered 2 broken pieces off of what looked like off of a firearm. And they also recovered a .22 caliber shell casing.
Authorities now hunt for the murder weapon.
They start looking on social media, they start looking, conducting search warrants, they start confiscating different firearms or people involved, and they seem to see this one particular gun that grabs their eye.
They find photos on social media of Katie shooting a pink gun, but then Katie removes them.
Now the Sheriff's Department and I realize that it is likely that if we get a search warrant for J.D. and Katie's house, the gun that killed Robin might be there.
When they went to the house, they were armed with information. They knew what they were looking for.
Authorities entered the Spielbauer house.
The Sheriff's Department during the search recovered probably 15 or 20 guns, several rifles, shotguns, but several pistols. Next to Katie's side of the bed in a nightstand, they recovered a 9mm, as I recall.
And they find a .22 caliber. You know, at the time, it's a .22 caliber. We're looking for a .22 caliber. When they recovered it, they says, wait a minute, there's pink on that gun, and we have pink on the vehicle.
The pink gun is examined by a forensic officer.
Also, the gun had damage to it. It's a polymer gun. The top of it's aluminum alloy. You know, there was pieces chipped off of it.
The pink paint samples from the crime scene match Katie's pink gun.
Eventually, the investigation determined that they were likely caused by that gun striking against the window while the window was rolled up. Obviously, this is intriguing, and obviously to the investigators and to me, this seemed like it would be important. If Robin were cowering inside the vehicle with the window up, and her assailant is beating on the window with that gun, trying to get her to open the window, and left that pink polymer smear on the window, now we know a lot more about what was happening out at Helium Road than we did before.
Suspect weapons will be test fired to get reference casings and projectiles to compare to the evidence from the scene. We do these comparisons using a comparison microscope, which is basically two microscopes joined by an optical bridge. So we can look at the test fires and compare them to the evidence from the scene.
In a semi-automatic, the casing can be just as important in identifying the firearm. When that casing is extracted from the semi-automatic, it leaves extraction marks on the casing that are unique to that gun. Fairly quickly, ballistics was able to match the shell casing recovered out at the scene to that .22. And the gun belonged to Katie. And nobody else ever used this gun, only Katie. There were pictures of her all over Facebook firing the gun. There were pictures of her teaching her children how to target practice using that gun. Everybody knew that was her gun.
With the clear match to her gun, Katie is brought in for questioning.
No, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I liked her, because I didn't. But my father died when I was 2. I buried my mother when I was 18 years old. I know what it feels like to grow up without a parent. I would never do that to anybody. I'm not a murderer. I may be a lot of things, but I'm not a murderer.
Her text messages, however, seem to tell another story.
On the 7th, the last communication she had with JD was a text message in which, again, about 3 o'clock, she accuses JD again of having an affair with Robin. He denies it again, and she says, "I'll take care of this myself. I'll put an end to it." 7, 8 hours later, Robin's dead with a bullet in her brain, and so it was easy to think, well, I guess she took care of it.
JD tells investigators his version of events.
Got in the back seat with her and we was talking about the girls, the STARS test coming up.
JD put Katie at the scene of the murder. Eventually, he admits he went out to Helium Road and 34th to meet Robin. He claims that Katie then showed up and caught them there together.
A few moments later, hear a tapping on the glass. End up opening the door and I see Katie there, which took me by surprise.
And that's the last time JD says he sees Robin alive. Robin Spielbauer is murdered, and her ex-husband JD lies to police about their meeting on the night of her murder.
So JD changes his story again and tells police that he did go to Helium Road on the night of Robin's murder. However, he was just talking to Robin about the kids. He states that Robin was still alive when he left the scene.
But Katie's furious texts seem to tell a tale of murder. In JD's telling of events, he leaves his uncle and goes to Helium Road to speak with Robin. But there's more. JD says Katie shows up unexpectedly.
They're bickering back at each other. I'm trying to stop the bickering. I just put my foot down and say that this isn't what it looks like. We're talking about the girls. That's it. She says something along the lines of, I don't give a I turn to Katie, I tell her, let's get in the car, let's go home, put the foot down, this is done. I shut her door, and I go walking back to my truck.
He says, well, by the way, those chip marks on the window, that didn't happen while I was there. That had to have happened after I left, because there weren't any chip marks on the window when I left.
Katie attests she and her son Diego spend the evening with friends and leave about 10:13. However, Katie's best friend can't confirm that. She believes Katie left at 9:50, which would give Katie time to kill Robin.
JD tells the police that he originally lied because he thinks that Katie may have killed Robin and he wanted to protect her.
Forgive me for if I ended up misleading anybody. I was hoping that this wasn't true. Seriously. I still love Katie with everything I got.
Katie, however, is starting to have suspicions of her own.
I don't know. I'm starting to think maybe JD did it.
Katie demands a polygraph test to prove her innocence. With her pink gun established as the murder weapon and her husband's eyewitness testimony against her, this is a last-ditch attempt by Katie.
Polygraphs are not admissible in most criminal courts. However, police often use them as investigative aids to help include or exclude suspects.
Katie fails not one, but 2 polygraph tests. The case against her stacks higher and higher. Authorities trace Katie's cell phone and discover the night of the murder, it registers a ping off a cell phone tower.
The digital information we get from a ping tells us whether you're checking your voicemail or whether you're having a conversation or what it is you're doing on the phone. It tells us what time it took place. And it tells us you're within the range of the cell tower.
The information places Katie in a location and timeline that indicates she could have been leaving the scene of the murder.
And so when we added all that up and the sheriff's department brought me all of that information, I filed a murder charge against Katie Spielbauer.
Katie steadfastly maintains her innocence.
I did not do this.
So you have nothing to
That's not true. I don't know.
She was arrested and charged with the murder of Robin Spielbauer. After Katie had been sitting in jail for about a year, waiting trial, charged with the murder of Robin, one of the secretaries in my office mentioned that she had seen a fascinating show on television the night before, and it had to do with Wi-Fi tracking of cell phones. And we asked her, I said, "Now you mean cell towers?" And she said, "No, this is different. This Wi-Fi tracking can give you the location of a cell phone down to about 30 meters. Well, this was total news to me.
Authorities reinterpret the Wi-Fi data from the night of the murder and come to a shocking conclusion.
When I got all of this information, and I talked to a dozen different experts, I realized I'd locked up the wrong person. Sorry.
July 20th, 2015, I got a call from my attorney, and he said, "Katie, Mr. Farron wants to speak with you tomorrow, and when he gets there, I need you to just sit down and be quiet." So then Mr. Farron came down to the jail, and then he turned to me and he said, "I got the phone records back." I said, "It's about time." He said, "You were never on Helium Road." I said, "I've been telling you that for 15 and a half months. He said, "Today I'm gonna dismiss your case." And I fell out of the chair and I hit my knees and I started thanking God and praying and crying.
It was gut-wrenching. I wanted to personally apologize to her and tell her we were going to do everything we could to make it right.
With Katie innocent, suspicion immediately falls upon JD.
I was so angry, but at some point I had to make the decision. If he was able to kill Miss Spielbauer #1, and he was able to frame Miss Spielbauer #2, what's he gonna do to Miss Spielbauer #3? It took some time to heal and get over the anger, but eventually I told Farron, "Whatever you need." I will help you.
Authorities now listen to what Katie has to say about JD. The day after Robin's murder, Katie confronts JD.
And I said, you know, what did you do? What did you do? And he looked at me and he said, I don't know what you're talking about. I said, yes, you do. You know exactly what I'm talking about. What did you do? And it went from JD to somebody I've never seen before. And he grabbed me by the throat and he pushed me up against the wall and he got right in my face and he said, I handled the problem. And I just turned ice cold. And his eyes went from this demonic darkness back to JD, and you could see it in his eyes. He thought, oh my gosh, why did I say that? Now she knows. Now she knows. And I just looked at him. What do you mean you handled the problem?
JD's a clever man. He's a very clever individual. I've tried 6 capital murder trials, but this is the most amazing case of my career.
J.D. Spielbauer implicates his wife, Katie Spielbauer, as the killer of his ex-wife, Robin. Katie sits in jail awaiting trial for 467 days. But when the DA's secretary learns about new technology for tracing cell phone signals, Katie is cleared of suspicion and set free. Authorities look for clues with fresh eyes and a new suspect.
As Sherlock Holmes says, when you've eliminated every other possibility, whatever's left has to be the truth.
And finally I said to them, you're telling me that not one single business in that area has cameras? And that's when they went and found the video footage from the ATM where they saw Robin's car, and then they saw JD's truck, and then they saw JD's truck come back.
Surveillance video from a bank shows Robin Spielbauer driving past an Amarillo National Bank branch at 9:21 p.m. en route to the scene of the murder. It also shows J.D. Spielbauer driving past at 9:27 p.m. and driving back the other way at 9:50 p.m. As investigators search for more evidence against J.D., one of JD's ex-girlfriends has more to say than she initially let on.
We actually interviewed her 3 times because our original source kept saying, she's not telling you everything she knows, she's just afraid of JD. We finally brought her back the 3rd time and under threat of a grand jury subpoena, and she said, all right, I'll tell you, but you've got to protect me from JD.
To the astonishment of authorities, the woman speaks with JD just days before Robin's murder.
They sit out on the front porch of her grandmother's house where she lived, and JD tells her about his problems with Robin and Katie, and how Robin is just driving him nuts about child support and visitation, and they're having all kinds of problems, and he would just be better off if she were out of their lives. In fact, the best thing that could happen would be for her to have a bullet in her brain. And 5 days later, she had a bullet in her brain.
Not only is the testimony incriminating, it also points to a pattern of behavior in JD's relationships.
I was his property. He told me where I could go, what I could wear. If he didn't want me to leave the house, he would take fuses out of my car.
Eventually, in the course of the investigation of the murder of Robin Spielbauer, J.D. Spielbauer gave 4 different versions of what happened that night.
JD has left a trail of clues that let investigators know he's anything but innocent. Finally, authorities are able to put the pieces together.
In his 4th version, his lie, he says, well, by the way, those chip marks on the window, that didn't happen while I was there. That had to have happened after I left, because there weren't any chip marks on the window when I left.
He claimed that he saw the marks while the vehicle was parked at the sheriff's office for processing.
So I contacted the sheriff's department, and they started laughing. And I said, "What is so funny?" And they said, "We took that window out of the vehicle and sent it to the lab in Lubbock. It's been in the lab in Lubbock 120 miles away since the day after the investigation started. So unless he can see from here to Lubbock, he didn't see any chip marks on the window at the sheriff's department."
As police revisit the evidence they had collected from the initial investigation, more and more clues fall into place.
When they executed the search warrant on the house, JD's standing there next to me and he says, "You know they're gonna take all of our guns, right?" He was so nervous about that.
Now, at the time, nobody thought that was important. But looking back later, how did JD know they were going to look for guns? Everybody thought Robin died from blunt force trauma. Why would they be looking for guns? The only person who knew a gun would be important was the person that killed her.
We had approximately 8 firearms in the house. The only gun that was registered to me, the only one that I ever actually purchased, was a pink .22. Every time we would take it to the shooting range, it would jam.
From the very beginning, I should have been puzzled as to why would Katie take a gun that malfunctions all the time out to kill Robin when she had a wonderful 9mm that works perfectly well? And it's a larger caliber, much more effective if you want to kill somebody. If it's Katie that killed Robin, it doesn't make much sense. But if it's JD, it makes all the sense in the world. He knows that everybody knows the .22 is Katie's gun.
Finally, another piece of evidence falls into place.
We learned during the investigation that Robin carried in her wallet her own Social Security card and the Social Security card of her 2 children. Eventually, we knew those were the only Social Security cards ever issued for those 2 children. During the search of JD's truck, the deputy found inside his console 2 Social Security cards, the Social Security cards of JD and Robin's 2 children. If Robin always carried those Social Security cards in her wallet, how did they end up in JD's truck?
How indeed, unless JD is with Robin the night of her murder. For the murder of his ex-wife, Robin Spielbauer, Jeremy Spielbauer is sentenced to life in prison with parole eligibility in 2046.
We want to get the bad guys and protect the good guys. It is our worst nightmare that we lock up the wrong person. But Katie spent 467 days locked in a cell because I ignored evidence that was available. I just didn't look at it close enough. I didn't look at it with an open mind.
But in the end, the evidence saves Katie. She goes on to earn a degree in legal studies.
When I was released from jail, I immediately started school. I'm the first person in my family to graduate college. I got a bachelor's degree in legal studies, and I work as a defense paralegal for a wonderful attorney here in town.
Now divorced from JD Spielbauer, she vows to work to help those who are wrongly accused.
I am also the director of strategy for a nonprofit called Ignite You First. Our goal is to break generational cycles of trauma and to build hope in people who have been through anything that could be considered a traumatic event.
Katie's a good person at heart. I'll never pass up an opportunity to tell the world that I made a mistake and she's innocent. She had nothing to do with the death of Robin Spielbauer.